Hello and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, 𝐊𝐢𝐦 𝐅𝐻𝐦. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be really great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent programs and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible women in business to talk about their journey to creating their own businesses, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. In this third season of the podcast, we're going to take that one step further. I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And at the end of each episode, we're going to dig into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. If you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and you want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca and click on the button at the top of the page that says take the quiz. Then you can share your results, connect with our guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at 𝐊𝐢𝐦. This week, my guest is Kim Fuller. Kim is a mindful photographer, meditation guide, author, TEDx speaker, founder of Born to Rise, and the creator of the Women's Story Festival. Kim's incredible passion for helping women stand in their power and tell their stories comes from her own lived experience and how she navigated her most challenging moments. Kim uses photography and storytelling to mirror the beauty she sees in every woman, empowering everyone she encounters to show up authentically in business and in life. And I certainly felt that power in our conversation here today. Well, hi there. I have today as my guest on the podcast, Kim Fuller, who is the incredible founder of Born to Rise. And she does all manner of things. She's an incredible photographer. She is a spiritual coach. She's a TEDx speaker. And I'm super excited to have this conversation because when Kim and I first connected, we were just kindred spirits, like right from the start, weren't we, Kim?
We were. I loved you the minute like your face popped on the screen.
I love you right back. That's fantastic, Kim. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, because I know, this is part of what we connected over is you told me a little bit about your story, your journey to being a female founder. And I hope you'll share some more of that, here today with the audience. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm not old. I have a very youthful spirit, but I've been in business for a long time. So as a freelance photographer, and I think my love of photography, and, I mainly focus on portraits and people, is the years moving around as a Navy kid. I was always observing people and super curious about people. And so it really was a wonderful way for me to connect with people using the camera. Yeah. So I've always loved that idea of meeting people, in a really intimate way, if you will, because I feel like when you're doing a portrait session, it is a very intimate experience. And I feel like I know the person a little bit more deeply when there's an intimate connection versus just general like party talk. Hey, how's the weather? How are the kids? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And so I'm only saying that because it really segues into almost everything I've done in my life is really finding deep connection and deep, connection from the soul's place. Like, who are you? What's your story? How did you get where you are? What kind of influences have you had? How do you feel about things? How do you think? It's always been fascinating for me. Yeah. And so as a photographer for that many years, partway through my marriage, I had 2 children already. We adopted a 3rd child, and he came into our life when he was 8 years old. So he already came with his own story. And it affected him, sadly, in a pretty traumatic way. And he had a lot of, I don't even want to say anger. He had a lot of disrupted emotional behaviors. And it was challenging for us as a family. But he really became my greatest spiritual teacher. And I was in the midst of studying Buddhism and mindfulness at the time. And so here I am thinking I'm all Zen and I've got it all handled, sitting on my little yoga mat, meditating all cool with my fingers in the right positions and whatever. And here comes this whirling dervish in my life whose mind is completely the opposite. And so it was really this beautiful observation for me of my own ego, my own everythings, and how I thought the world should look with an adopted child, that he would love us and he would be happy. And, we were creating this beautiful life for him, blah, blah, blah. Well, everyone's on their own path, as we know, and he had his own story to tell
Yeah.
and to buy into. But long story short, I wrote a book about our journey together. Much later, he's now 21. So the book came out about 6 years ago. And then I did a TED Talk about it. And that experience of really dissecting my story and then sharing it out loud was really the impetus for the Born to Rise business that I've now created. It is a women's storytelling platform. And basically, I was thinking about how empowered I felt after sharing that story. And actually, my son that I mentioned came out on the stage at the end afterwards. And I think it was really empowering for him too, to really stand in that story and show everybody that he is okay, right? Like, I'm good, I'm doing my thing, this is my life. And yeah, I did all that stuff, but I'm also working on myself, and so is my mom, and it was really this wonderful thing to look at the way we can examine ourselves, whether it's standing in front of a camera and being looked at, or you're going inward and looking at yourself and really looking at that. And how does that show up in the world? And so Born to Rise is really encouraging women to stand up and claim their story, and from a place where they can feel triumphant around it and not full of shame or guilt or anything, but that it's like chapter 1, chapter 2, like that with every chapter in our life, we have an opportunity to transform, to try something new, to make a new choice and look at possibilities. And that other stuff, right? Whatever happened in our lives before, whether we did it or something was perhaps done to us,
right?
We can see that as something that we choose versus sort of the conditioning that maybe came around that, like, ooh, if I was raped, that means I am X, Y, and Z because of what society says, right? But how do I want to stand in that and claim like myself and the fact that I'm still standing, I'm still moving, I'm still creating, I'm still working.
Yes.
If you're not obviously looking for the support you need, but that all of those options are possibilities, not just the one option of buying into being a victim. And you obviously were a victim at one point, but can you move from that space?
Yeah, and not allowing what has happened to you to define you.
Exactly. That you get to redefine it. You get to write the story, right? You get to rewrite a story so that it feels empowering and that it feels like it meant something. Like that experience, even though it was super hard, meant something really important in my life. And this is the way I want to move forward with that. And that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
I screwed up a lot raising my son in those early.
100%.
Oh my goodness. I made a lot of mistakes. This was a whole new territory for me because my birth children were pretty, easy, normal. They came for me. I knew their ins and outs. I had no idea what I was working with. Right. So it challenged me, and I really saw sides of myself that I did not like. And I was like, okay, stop, pause. I created a whole pause method actually to help other people even practice this idea of like pausing, like reset, get present, look at what you're doing. And that really helped. Yeah. It just really helped me to sort of slow down and reflect and then recover. And I used to say that to my son all the time, like, it's not about always what happened, but how we recover from what happened, because then the next time we do a little better, and then the next time we do a little better, every time we can reassess and reevaluate.
I love that, because I think, and this is reflective in the work that I do with female leaders, female founders, is that we don't We get so busy doing all of the things. We run a business, we run a family, we've got a life, we've got a relationship, right? We're doing
Yes.
all of those things that and I'm saying we, because I put myself firmly in this camp, we struggle to pause,
Yeah.
to do that important, to just stop, to say time out.
Yeah. It's like I often have my clients when I'm working with them in this place of overwhelm, when I know that they're these brilliant women and they're just
Yeah.
like, ah, right? Is like we need to be the center of that tornado. We need to feel like that space in the
Yeah.
middle where it's like quiet and calm in our interior, even if everything is swirling around us at 90 miles an hour. Can we be a certain way, right?
Yeah.
Not and yes, there are sometimes things to do, but how do you be in the
Right.
doing is what
Yeah.
I think is really the key. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so that practice for me of meditating and getting centered and grounded and knowing that I had that ability, that I could apply that in those crazy moments. Like, and yeah, like I said, I screwed up. Like I would get triggered, I would react, I would do the things, but
100%.
it got less and less the more I could practice it and reflect and say, okay, you did that thing again where you yelled at him when he got upset. And can next time you just hug him instead, or take some deep breaths before you speak, or, and
Right.
so when I could reflect, it would almost remind myself and rewire the way I would react the next time or respond, hopefully.
There is 100% some neurobiology involved in that. You are
Oh,
physically
yes.
changing the way the circuitry works in your brain. But I
That's
want
right.
to ask you, because I think that this is important to point out. And what I often uncover when I am working with these busy, driven, passionate female leaders and passionate, driven mothers,
Yes.
is the key here in embracing that being space, that pausing space, is that you have to know who you want to be. And it sounds like, Kim, you had done a great deal of that work,
Yeah.
so you knew when you hit the pause button who you wanted to be in that moment, and you could reflect on that. And that's somewhat what I find missing in with a lot of the women I work with, is they don't even know who they want to be anymore. They don't know what matters most. They don't know what their purpose is. Like, they've gotten so far away from that. Do you find that same thing, Kim?
I used to, but let me tell you a really great story real quick. I love stories, you know that. When I was before I adopted my son, about probably 2 years before adopting him, I was on a photo assignment to photograph the Dalai Lama, who was giving a presentation at the 𝐊𝐢𝐦 University, and he came in to go towards the stage from the back of the tent, and as he's moving through, I was just fascinated by how much impact he had on every single person in that tent. Like, I have photos of the crowd, like a huge crowd, every single face is staring at him, smiling, beaming. I mean, he had such a magnetism, and I was really enamored by the way he was affecting people. And I thought, what is happening, right? And so when he got to me, I was sitting on the edge of the aisle about 3 rows back from the stage. So by the time he got to me, I was just like, whoa, like what's going on, right? And so I literally put my camera down, even though he was right there. And he turned towards me after being on the other side of the aisle greeting people, and shook my hand. And something magical happened. And all I can describe it as is pure love in that moment between the two of us. It was like all of my ego went away, all my worries about the shots I was going to get, where I was sitting, what was my expectation for that day, blah, blah, blah. It was like there was this moment. And when you experience that, or when you experience something like that, it, for me, it was so much less about who I want to be, but how do I be love? How do I just be love? And what I have found since that time and moving forward, let's see, that's probably been 15 years since that experience almost, is that I've cultivated this sense of loving not only mainly myself and then out in the world.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, everything else has fallen into place because of that. I learned to love my son by saying, I have to let go of the expectations I have for him, some certain roadmap he was supposed to follow,
Yeah.
what he was going to do with school, blah, blah, and say, I'm going to just love you. And I do that with my clients. I do that with my photography clients. I hold that space for women when they're telling their stories.
Yeah.
I really have practiced this. And what it's allowed me to do is say, the universe knows. I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but it's like the universe knows. And now I know what the universe wants for me to do here. And it's almost like it's been calling me, and it's new every day.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, but as soon as you open up that space of sort of connecting to that, what I call higher power, you can call it God, you can call it Jesus, you can call it whatever your passion is, or faith.
Yeah.
But there's this certain sense of knowing that comes with simply loving yourself and saying, I'm okay just as I am. Like, I don't need to know everything. I don't need to have all the answers. Right.
No. Yeah.
I hope that's a good enough answer. I know it's like I said, but
no, but I think it's, I wrote it down. I love what you said about, how do I just be love?
Yeah.
I do believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that we innately know how to love. Like that's built, that we come pre-programmed with that.
Yep.
And so if we just show up with love in our heart,
yes,
that in itself is the way to be. And we can figure the rest out sort of from there. And that's not to denigrate, like, not to say that that's not hard work. Like self-love, true self-love, it's hard work, right? That's not, when anybody that's listening, Kim and I are not saying, well, just love yourself. Like, we know that's not, that's not necessary. It's not as easy as said, it's done. But when we show up with love, right?
Well, if you think about the conditioning we get from almost the minute we're born, it's all about sort of fixing problems.
Yeah.
Instead of nurturing the things that are working.
Yeah.
We're stop crying.
We are hard-coded to see the malfunctions, aren't we?
Yeah. And I think it goes way back to, caveman times when there was this heightened survival instinct and fear that we were going to, die if a tiger pops out of the bush. Right. And it's like almost in our cells to be in this place of like high alert, like we're under attack or whatever. We have to always be on guard. And we don't have those same threats, but we've found replacements for them for sure.
Yeah.
And so we walk around what I always have noticed is that often we operate from our place of trauma versus our place of love. It's where like our pain is often how we show up in the world. Like, I have pain around, I don't love my body. I have pain around abuse. I have pain around, I'm not smart enough. I have pain around, I'm Black, white, Chinese, whatever national, there's things that come with all of that. There's so many pain points that have been pointed out to us, and we sort of get conditioning around that. We somehow forget all the beauty and the gifts and the things that we can and are able to do. And we just need a good reminder. And I know if you've been in a really loving relationship, and I hope you have, whether it was your mother or a partner or the Dalai Lama, there's a moment where that love what's the word? It's better than anything else. It's bigger than anything else. It defeats everything else, right? It's the only thing. And so I feel like in this life, whether you want to call it business or just living, the journey is to return to love, right? And so and many of us in our businesses, I think, are doing that. We're trying to help and serve people in a way that is from our hearts, which is a very loving and giving thing. We
Yeah.
just have to remember not to forget ourselves in all of that.
And isn't that exactly it? Because we're really, really good at offering that to other people. And it seems infinitely more challenging to offer that same kindness, love, empathy, whatever, to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, think about your inner narrative. Like, what do you tell yourself all day long? Would you ever say those things to a dear friend?
No.
Especially if you're beating yourself up all day long, like, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm not enough, I'm not. And then would you ever, and it's like, that's not fair, because you've been put on this planet as a gift. Like, it is rare to be a human, to be
Yeah.
allowed to be birthed into this beingness. I mean, we're a planet that's inhabited by people in such a massive universe. Like,
Yeah.
it's so rare. It's
like
so
that.
rare.
I like that a lot. Like looking at it from that enormous cosmic perspective.
Oh my gosh, think about it.
We're tiny little specks, but aren't we super special? Because as
I
far as
mean,
we know, we're kind of it. Like there's 9 billion of us, but in an infinite universe, 9
but
billion is
yeah,
nothing. Like it's super
yeah,
special.
it's rare. I mean, I look at it as rare and I say, okay, if this is my opportunity to figure this out, like, I'm not going to waste any time. And that's a lot of the Buddhist teachings. They really talk about the fact that the human condition allows us to process in this way. And they believe that in the spiritual world, um, we don't get that same opportunity to grow like this. So
Yeah.
in this particular way. And so there may be a lot of different ways that we've shown up, right? Whether it's spiritual, a ghost, an angel,
Yeah.
a human being, whatever your beliefs are, I don't know. And I don't know either. I don't know what the other things are.
Right.
But all I know right now is that this is a rare experience.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take advantage of figuring some stuff out. And so that I can get back to this place of love and nirvana, heaven.
Yeah.
And
Whatever.
can I do that as a human being?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do I have to wait until I get to heaven?
Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing as you're talking is just this idea that each of us, we are as individuals special, precious, unique, and that we are just so infinitely special in that. And that in itself, you're right. Then it makes all of that negative self-talk that we do, all of that inner critic who pounds us, beats us up every day. You're
Right.
right. It makes it really unfair and totally uncalled, like just downright uncalled for, because we are precious. We are
Well,
one in an infinite, like, yeah, I love that perspective.
and and that's it. It's a perspective, and it's a fun thing that I often play with in metaphors around photography and the different lenses that we look at our life through, right?
Yeah.
And I love that, because even when I'm using a telephoto lens, for example, and I'm zooming in on somebody to get a close-up shot, I am only seeing what's in that little space and the details, and the eyes, nose, mouth, whatever, maybe some skin conditions and some hair textures and things like that. But there's, with that zoomed in perspective, I don't know anything about their relationship to anything else, right? And so then you pop on this wide angle lens, which, if you want to call that, the way that you view the world, you back up a little bit, right? You include this broader perspective and you look at things in relationship to others. So even though, yes, we can zoom in and see our unique, special, wonderful qualities, we are also related to every single other person and being on this planet. And so there's this wonderful balance of being special and remembering that, and acknowledging your unique talents and gifts and things that you can offer the world, and saying, and I can bring them out. And it could be one person, or you could affect 1 million people. It really doesn't matter.
how's it all connected? The people, the places, the animals, the, you know, the natural space, the universe. Like, yeah, that I love that metaphor of the zooming in and the zooming out. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really a beautiful way to look at it.
I mean, if you think about, think about someone who does, hides their gifts and talents.
Yeah.
And then what happens when they do share them? It can be something as simple as you are an amazing knitter and you make these incredible blankets.
Yeah.
And you think of that, you might think of that as, well, that's just my hobby. It's so easy. It's not really anything special. It doesn't feel special because it is the thing, and it's what you're supposed to be doing, and
Yeah.
that's why it's easy.
Yes. Yes.
And so with Born to Rise, that is how it has felt for me, is that nothing has been a challenge in the sense of, business challenges. Yes, there are tasks and things that can be a pain,
Yeah.
but the actual business seems to be flowing through me, and I'm literally just this vessel
I love
that the
it.
universe is saying, you're the person we want to do this because you have all the things that you need to put this into place to help these people.
I love
And
it.
and so if it's that, then great. Maybe it'll be big. Maybe it'll just stay in Rhode Island. Who the hell knows? But
Who knows?
I just stay present, and it's amazing. And so that's where it's really been going, is this place of like, I'm okay. I'm held by this thing in a way that I've never been held before. And I loved my photography. I was really, I'm good at it. I connect with the people. I loved it, and it was a great career, and I'm so blessed. But there's something different about this.
Yeah, I love it.
There's something different about this.
I love what you said there, Kim. That was really impactful for me. And I'm sure it will be, for those women that are listening, that it is what you're supposed to do. And there's real beauty in that, in when we can make a living doing that, when we can impact others, clients and team members doing that. But Kim, I know that it's not always easy. And I always ask my guests, because I think there's great learning here. Like, where have you screwed it up, messed it up? And what have you learned? Like, tell us a little bit about that too.
I think where I've messed up is internally with my mindset.
Okay.
I've messed up by, so being an artist, I think, there's this stigma of like, oh, art is broke. You're supposed to be broke. That's the way you're successful. You're a struggling artist. You're this, right. And I also grew up with a money mindset that was lack mentality. We didn't have enough, right? And we did have enough. And it just because my mother in particular had a lot of struggles in their family with finances, and it just carried through. So I had this certain mindset that I could only do X, Y, and Z to make money.
Right.
And I was only going to make this amount. It was never going to go, I was never going to be in the 6-figure department or the whatever, right? And I think probably only, honestly, in the last 3 years have I really dived into that and recognized that was a stumbling block, and that was really holding me back. And I've learned to trust myself. And, a very dear friend used to always say, you're creative, resourceful, and whole. And I do believe that about myself. I am creative. I am resourceful. And I have a lot of support in the world. And not everyone has that. And I know that, but it is something that can be sought out. But releasing that mindset and saying that I live in abundance. I even changed all my passwords on my banking to reflect like abundance and dollar signs and all these things. And I never put my purse on the floor. Somebody told me about that, like respecting where my money lives. Like I never put my purse on the floor anymore. I always try to hang it up or hold it in my lap at a restaurant. Just little shifts like that, and sort of seeing money as energy versus this number I had to reach, or I was never going to have enough. And, oh my God, I have to, yes, I look at my finances. I'm not ridiculous, but it's more,
right? Like, let's be practical here.
Right. There's a practical side of it for sure. But the mindset of I'm never going to have enough was always this barrier of trying out something new like Born to Rise, like shifting from a photography business that was moving along and this and that, but I had this vision and
Yeah.
trusting that if I went in that direction, even when I was writing my book, for example, I remember saying to my husband, like, I need to take a month off to go finish this book. And I'm going to go live with my sister who lived by her, just by herself with her husband. It was very quiet and whatever.
Yeah.
I said, I have to trust that I'll be okay, because I'm a freelancer. And if I don't make money, if I don't work, I don't make money. But I said, you know what? I'm going to trust this is the next step, because that too was calling me so strongly. It's fine. It worked out fine, right? It was, a month, but I had a hang up that, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And what has happened since trusting that is that I've never been let down, and I'm actually making more money than when I
Yeah.
sat and micromanaged my account all the time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when I've really followed and stayed with what calls me and trust that I am going to put my head down. I'm going to do the things that I need to do, and everything will be okay.
I love it.
And if it's not, I'm creative, resourceful, and whole.
Well, I
I'll
can
figure
figure
it
it out.
out.
I can figure it out. And that really speaks to me. That's a big part of the philosophy of the coach training that I did.
Yeah.
Naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. That you have or can find everything you need to create what you want to create. Like that's really the idea behind that philosophy. And I approach my clients that way. And by the time we've completed in our coaching relationship, they see that in themselves. And
Yes.
I think that that is a huge shift for so many of the clients that I work with. And I'm sure you see it with the women you work with, that they really understand what that means. They internalize.
Yes.
I am NCRW. I can create, I can find, I can access whatever I need to make it happen. And I
Yeah.
will be okay. Yes.
And that's really, and that's really where manifesting really comes in, right? Is that it's not just like we sit there and say, okay, I'm gonna attract $1 million. It's the mindset of saying, I'm a millionaire.
Yeah.
And how does a millionaire behave? And so for me, it was saying, I live in abundance. What
Yeah.
does a person who lives in abundance act like? And the same will go back to the thing about love, right? If I am love, how does a person who
I love that.
completely walks in love act like?
I think that that is an important shift in the way you look at that, right? It's
Yes,
being and how you align that with the doing. And
that's
I
right.
think, again, that's really important. We get really caught up in doing a bunch of things that we think we should do, or we have to do, or we're compelled to, right? But we don't align that with the being. And when we do that, we show up as love. We show up as abundant.
Yep.
And that I think makes all the difference in the world. I love Kim. I love it. I'm loving every minute of this conversation. So I do want to ask you, and Kim has already taken my leadership style quiz. So if you haven't, go back to the show notes or check it out on highvoltageleadership.ca. There's I've designed a very special leadership style quiz. It's really quick and easy to take, as Kim will tell you. It's not,
Yep.
it's kind of fun, it's informational, and it's going to give you the style of leadership that you use as an individual. And I'm going to give you in the report some of my top tips. So go check it out in the show notes, go check it out on the website, do it real quick, because I want to talk with you now, Kim, about your leadership style. And it was coaching. Yes?
Yeah, I believe it was coach.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you to lead with a coach-like approach?
So, like I said in the beginning, I really love people.
Mhm.
And for me, even when back in my 20s, I was a coach for a track team at a high school.
Love it.
And it was my first time saying, like, why are we working on something you're weak at? Why don't we work on the things that you're really strong in instead? And it was that shift for me. But I love finding people's innate talents and gifts. And so as I put together my Born to Rise Women's Story Festival, for example, it requires a committee because normally I'm a solopreneur. But when I put this committee and team together, I really look for the strengths in the individuals who are helping me out. Like, who's
Yeah.
the artistic one? They can help me with design. Who's the one who's really good at connecting people? They can help me find like the storytellers or the vendors or the authors who might come to the
Love
festival.
it.
Who's really good at tech and musical and marketing and blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
so like, putting the team together, I really try to find their strengths and basically coach or guide for what I need around that subject. And hopefully it's not too overwhelming for them because they're already good at it. Right. And so
Yeah.
I think that for me, that's my style, is really, trying to find the best in someone and encouraging that even more. Because I feel like we're happier when we're operating from that place anyway. I know for me it is.
Yeah. We're just way more effective. But I love the word you used, which I think is important. You use the word guide. And
Yeah.
as a coach like leader, and I would tell you I fall into this category too. So I identify as a leader who is a coach like leader. That's what we do. We're not, we again, we believe that you're creative, resourceful, and whole. We believe that you have great strengths that you can leverage to do amazing things. And
Yes.
we want to help you do more of that. But
Yeah.
we're not going to tell you what to do unless we absolutely have to.
Yep.
Right? We're not going to give you the 12 steps or the 6 ways or the method or like we have a bit of a framework because we got to keep this thing going in the right direction. But it really is about guiding people to create their own understanding, to uncover their own brilliance, if you will. Yes? Am I saying this?
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw a great film the other night called 𝐫𝐚𝐫𝐞, M-A-U, and it's
Okay.
about this man who's a designer, very famous designer, and he talks about not only designing in the world as far as architecture, graphic design, all that, but your life. Like
Yeah.
designing your life as if you're an artist, creating how you want your life to look. And I
Love-
found that to be such a powerful message, and I think it's something that I personally have tried to live by for a long time, but to hear him say it and so beautifully, just like thinking about like what do you want your business to look like in the sense of how it fits into your life, because you spend a lot of time there.
Yeah.
um and so if you're someone who can sit at a desk and crunch numbers all day, then God bless you, right? that that is not me, and I would be
No.
miserable, and I know that I have to design a different kind of life
Yes. Yes.
and be based on my own strengths and gifts. I'm not going to fight it and say, okay, accountants make great money, so that's what I'm going to go do.
Right.
What purpose would that really have? Except that maybe I'd get a vacation and get to use that money to travel. I don't know. But it's so, yeah, so it's really about so much mindset work for me, and really allowing people to create what works for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And not having an attachment on the how, having more of an attachment on the outcome or the result. And that's what I hear particularly. And I love your Born to Rise festival. We've talked about it. It just sounds like so much fun. Wish I was in Rhode
Yeah.
Island. But like,
Yes.
what is the outcome that I need? Who are the people that have the strengths to develop that? And being somewhat unattached to how we get there. We want to have a great festival. We need to have great marketing. Who has that creative background in marketing and advertising and connecting? How we get to that message getting out there is, letting them leverage some of that beautiful
Yeah.
stuff. And that is the coach approach to being a leader.
I think one of the greatest practices too is for me to practice even letting go of the expectation for the outcome.
Mhm.
I want to plan the outcome, right? I
Yes.
have a design for the outcome, but if I don't want to suffer or have less of it, then I have to be a little flexible around that
Right.
expectation as well.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that I coach my female founders, my CEOs, what to be, you're right, less attached to the actual outcome, but really engaging. And you'll like engaging as a storyteller so you can enroll people in the vision. What's your
Yes,
vision? Because that's what makes you a great CEO, is
that's right.
having that compelling vision and telling the story in such an incredibly compelling way that they see themselves on that journey. They
That's
can
right.
identify, they believe in their role. And I think, Yeah. So in that way, that outcome becomes theirs as much as it is yours. And those are the beautiful, compelling leaders we see over and over again in industry, but also in our, in all manner of places in our world that, they just lead people in such a compelling way. I know you get that because I know you are all about story. I absolutely love it. Kim, thank you so much for having this conversation. You've inspired me today, and I really appreciate that. And you've given us a real perspective shift. And we're going to put in the show notes of this episode some links to Kim, her book, certainly her Born to Rise Festival, because it is nifty. So that you can find her. But yeah, we'll make sure there's some ways to be in touch with Kim. Because she
This
does.
was so fun, Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.